Really quickly, and I'm pretty much echoing what everyone else has said, but there are two differences that I want to repeat because I feel like there's a call to action in both of them. First is that the problem looks different than it did in the 60s. When we talk about racism, we're talking about highly adaptive systems of social control that are based on the construct of race. And they look different, they evolve, they do not simply end. And so we tend to tell this story about the civil rights movement in this very naive way, thinking that, oh, well, Dr. King preached the I Have a Dream speech, and then it happened. Only it didn't. And so now the problem looks different. And so if you're waiting for people to bust out the hoods and the nooses and their pitchforks and their torches and to come to somebody's apartment building before you get active, you are waiting too long. It is happening. The institution of slavery still exists in this country. It never ended. People are still being lynched. Leadership is still being targeted in our communities. It's still happening. So you cannot wait for it to be overt like it was back then. Also, leadership looks different in this movement. We have a lot of decentralized movements, and that is a strength of our movement, I believe. And so if you're waiting for a Dr. King or a Malcolm X that you can jump behind, you're waiting too long. You're letting the moment pass you. We don't have Dr. Kings and Malcolm X's, and the leadership that we do have looks different from them. Those charismatic leaders that we have, they're not walking around in suits and ties and trying to meet all of the checkpoints of respectability. They don't look that way. And you can't be looking for them. And mind you, even when we were wearing suits and ties, they were still lynching us. Right. Come on. And so if you're waiting for those signs of the old world and the old civil rights movement, you're going to miss your moment. It's happening right now.
I wish we had about an hour and a half more.
Now, there is a saying in Swahili that goes, when a fool becomes wise, the wise are in trouble. This is the case of what's happening right now in the United States. Most black people are really coming to realize that much of what they should have has been robbed away from them, and they need to come together and identify strategies through which they can empower themselves, or they can get what is theirs that was taken away from them. This is the case of these young black Americans who are discussing how systemic racism has affected the growth of the black child in America and how they can come back and sort out this issue. I think the wise are in trouble right now because blacks have become wise and they want to address this issue once and for all. I want you to listen to this engagement, then we shall be back in a moment. Let's watch.
Okay, well, let me start with why I feel called to not be silent on systemic racism. So I grew up in a very bicultural context. I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I grew up in a black neighborhood but went to white schools. When I went to college out in Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania, I saw a very deep need there to help the black students adjust to a very white world because we were in central Pennsylvania where the KKK was live and active. And having grown up in Minnesota and went to white schools, I knew how to navigate white schools, but many of my friends were from Baltimore, Maryland, and all black counties, PG County, and it was a shock to them to be in this very white context. And so I started working with them to help them survive college. And at a certain point, I had a friend in my major, I was having lunch with him, he was a white male, and I said to him, why is it that you and I are in the same major, same program, same year, but you don't know any of my experience, and I know so much of your experience, and our worlds are so separate and so apart. And that really was the start of me working towards addressing racism on a massive scale. I actually designed a conference for my college. And then when I came out here to California and working at Fuller, God just started putting things in my lap in terms of opportunities to help Fuller as an institution address issues with racism. So now I'm in my role, I'm Director of Operations for the Pinnell Center for African American Church Studies. And this call to work within an institution is difficult and it's challenging because you're not just working with individual people. You're looking at systems and saying, how are these systems actually making it more difficult for people to thrive and for people to have equal opportunity in the classroom, people to have equal opportunity when they graduate, or even how do we as an institution cause systemic oppression within the larger Pasadena and Los Angeles community. So you're really looking at racism on a massive scale and trying to carry a prophetic voice to challenge the institution to live out this gospel faithfully because it is a Christian institution. So it's my call, so that's why I do it. That's why I don't stay silent. If I were to stay silent, I don't know what would happen to me.
Pass it over to you, to Andre, and somewhat of the same question. You've chosen also not to remain silent, and why are you making that choice? And can you talk about your experience of the subversive liturgy and where that came from, and how you're experiencing a sense of call, not just for you, but in the community?
Okay. So for me, it's an existential thing, where I grew up in a small town called Pine Lake, Georgia, that wanted to be a city so badly, because it's not really, it's like a street. But they wanted to be a city so badly that they did whatever they needed to do to become a city. And Pine Lake is a part of Stone Mountain, which is like where the KKK, that's where they make them. That's where they come from. I lived next to a Klansman who was also the preacher of the church right up the street from me. Put a shotgun on my brother for walking the dog through the neighborhood. But in Georgia, in Pine Lake, Georgia, you were not allowed to talk about racism. You talk about race at all, you're pulling the race card. And so it took me until I moved to New York City to even begin to realize that all of the things that I was experiencing was not just me being delusional or misled, because that's what people like to say is that, it's just the media spin, which means that I'm gullible, or that's not really a thing. I'm paranoid, yeah, or it's just my imagination, which means I'm delusional. And so I started realizing that no, it's not my imagination. There's actually language for what I'm experiencing, and that many people are experiencing that same thing, and that it's not over. So when Alton Sterling and Philando Castile were killed, and those videos were circulating, something inside of me just said, I have to put my body in this somehow. I had already tried to make music no one was really listening to. And so I was like, I have to do something. And eventually, and this is kind of where a subversive liturgy grew out of me just trying to say to people, this really is a thing. It's a real thing. It affects real people. And that began with me carrying a rock around town, that I painted white and wrote all these things on. And so subversive liturgy kind of grew out as the third act of me being really dramatic around town, and carrying a rock around and wearing a blazer that had the names of police victims on it and all that kind of thing. And I just felt like it was going to involve more people. Actually, I got pissed off around November, ish, when I realized that not only was it just me experiencing this, but there were a lot of people of color, a lot of LGBTQ people, a lot of immigrants who, when they went to church, that rock that I was dragging in, it was ignored, right? I'm wheeling a boulder into churches and no one wants to say anything about it, no one wants to talk to me. And I realized that everyone else who was carrying a burden into church, that burden was not being addressed. And so you can come into the presence of God, but you can't bring your baggage in here. You can come into the presence of God, but you cannot bring your social reality here. And God is not interested in addressing that social reality, and the gospel doesn't reach that social reality, and that just got me pissed off. And so a subversive liturgy grew out of the fact that we needed a liturgy, we needed some type of worship space where we could engage God in our social reality, where we could say, God gives a shit, I'm sorry, about the fact that, about police brutality, about mass incarceration, about all of that stuff. And it was centered, it really was centered around the death of J.R. Thomas. Because I felt like it was not fair that when they killed J.R., they left this memorial in front of his apartment building, and that's what we're supposed to do because his life mattered. That's what we're supposed to do. But it's also a painful reminder of the loss to that neighborhood. And so every time I pass by that street, first off, I live just about a mile north of there, but I have to make a left or a right to pass by. And I couldn't pass by Orange Grove without making a left or a right anymore. I had to go by and see it. And so we felt like we need to put this at the doorstep of those who created this loss. We need that. There should be a memorial to JR's life at the police station because the police should have to see it and they should have to deal with it. So our subversive liturgy grew out of that action of putting that memorial there every day. The police take it down, we put it back up. And so all of that just kind of converged right there as a space for us to really engage God in light of our social reality.
Thank you. Jasmine, you've made your own choice not to be silent. And you've been a leader of this movement in the streets in Pasadena and in the city council chambers. Can you talk about what moved inside of you? Was there a moment? Was it a process? And what is that sense of call where it doesn't allow you to be silent?
What doesn't allow me to be silent is if I don't do this, I'm going to die. My friend's going to die. I'm tired. As you guys are speaking right now, I feel like crying. Yeah. I'm angry. I got tired of just being so angry and being silent. I got tired of walking in Pasadena and seeing nobody do nothing. You know what I mean? I'm from this city. And to see people, they come in gatherings like this and talk about it, but nobody does anything about it. Or they go fraternize from the church to the police station and cahoots with the police, And so I got tired of seeing that type of stuff. And I got tired of seeing the mothers cry. It's not fair. It's not fair that mothers bury their children. So what called me is I'm tired. I got tired of putting my friends on my T-shirts. I got tired of having car washes. I'm tired of saying goodbye. It's something that we do in my community too much. I'm looking in this room right now, and you guys are very privileged because you guys are over the age of 25 years old. In my community, we're not living past 25 years old. 24 is it. And I'm just hurt. I'm in pain. So I decided to do something. I decided to say no more, even if it meant me being targeted, even if it meant my life is in danger. Because truly, what would Jesus do? Right? Like we all say we like to follow Jesus, but are you willing to put your life on the line? Are you willing to say, no, that is not okay? Even when it makes your friends uncomfortable, even when it makes those other people next to you uncomfortable, or the community or the police uncomfortable. Are you willing to stand on the line by yourself? That's what Jesus would do. And at the end of days, they said that those like me are going to look crazy. And everybody else is going to look sane. But I know that I'm following Christ. I know that I'm following God. I know that he moves me. I know that before I just wanted to be like complacent like everybody else. Stay out the way, live the American dream, have me a family, go get a house outside of Pasadena probably, you know what I mean? I don't know. But it wasn't this. It wasn't constantly being targeted, constantly have to turn around and seeing the police watching you, watching your mom, watching your family. But I still walk with my breastplate of righteousness. I still stand upright. And I have my sword next to me, and I have my angels next to me, and I just do it moving. You know what I mean? I just got tired. That's basically what it all falls down to. I got tired, and I started to love myself so that I could love my community.
That's it. That's it.
Delonte, you're doing this in the church, so talk about doing that and talk about what that means for you to do this in the church. Why aren't you staying silent?
I have no other choice. I'm just like everybody else on this panel. I got tired of going to the therapist office thinking that I was delusional. I was one of those kids that Janelle mentored, because I came from DC. So those are my friends from Peachtree County that were in these white environments. I went to the top liberal arts college in the country, got to meet all these progressives who, when they found out that I loved Jesus, thought I was stupid. So that was strike number one. And then when they found out that I didn't go to some private prep school like all the other brothers that was up in there fronting with their headphones on like they were hood, and I grew up in the hood, I was trying to figure out, where am I? And frankly, I had the same experience of alienation at Fuller, trying to figure out who are, first of all, who are all these white people, where they come from. They all went through Christian schools. I ain't never heard of none of them schools. And then I had to try to figure out who are all these black people, and what do they serve the same Jesus that I serve? And I think that's the journey of, I guess, sociologists, psychologists, they call it integration. I've been in a journey of integration because I realized that the Jesus that I met in my dad's in my mom's basement when I was 6, playing little vinyls of Dr. King speeches and memorizing those Dr. King speeches, and then preaching those Dr. King speeches all over the city. That was the only time I heard that message of liberation and hope. I did not hear it from any of my pastors. They wanted to save my soul. They wanted to see me happy. They wanted me to roll around in the ground, to experience a Pentecost that was of heavenly good, but no earthly good. And so the reason why I came to Fuller, the reason why I decided to respond to the call to ministry, is because I couldn't take it no more. I lived in DC serving at the idols of both Mammon and Caesar. Everybody in DC is like the people in this room, like me, like you all. Everybody in DC, we love to be on the boards. You know what I'm saying? We love to be on the website. We love to slip somebody our CV. That's what we worshiped. And when I started my business in DC, I've always had black mentors. I'm very grateful for that. Oh, glory be to God. I'm so thankful that growing up in my city, I always had black people that I knew could do anything. So I always felt like, man, they like Superman, Superwoman, they can do it. Now we've made our mistakes trying to be like white folk and, but what I mean when I say trying to be like white folk is think we can get away with the stuff that y'all get away with, cheating and lying on your taxes and getting elected to city council and taking bags of money. And I can name 4 brothers that I was close with back home who got elected to political office or something like that, and one by one, everybody went down for the count. Because they, when we get on the inside, Dr. King taught us to get on the inside and to integrate. So when we integrate, we mistook the ways of Jesus for the ways of whiteness. And so we thought that when we got integrated, that we could do everything y'all do. That's what we thought integration meant, right? I can do what white folk do. And so something about this call of following Jesus as a pastor means that I have to maybe invite people into what it might mean to follow a Jesus that doesn't look like Caesar, doesn't look like Mammon, actually is willing to reject that. Actually willing to put, your body, your life on the line. Colossians talks about Jesus, the nails going in Jesus' hands. Okay, I'm not going to preach another sermon.
And I know we got, when you get a preacher talking, give a preacher a microphone. It's a dangerous business.
All I'm saying is, I'm just like everybody else here. I ain't have a choice.
Yeah. Well, so what we see happening here, and this is how God works, and I'm going to try not to be the preacher with the microphone, is movements begin because God touches individual hearts, and then those individuals find each other. And what we're seeing happening, not just in Pasadena, but around this country, and maybe even around the world, is a new movement. And people are starting to use movement language. And I'm just going to let you all kick this around. How do you see this movement today being different from the civil rights movement, either as it really was or as we nostalgize it today? And what does that look like here in Pasadena?
Let me say real quick, just since I have the microphone still, and then I'll pass it on. This is quick. The main difference is preachers don't get to just roll up and say, give me the mic. The biggest lesson that I've learned in this movement is sit down, show up, be consistent, and show love. And if somebody wants you to speak, to say something, they'll ask you to speak and say something.
You go first. What I see for the movement in Pasadena, right now, well, I don't know if you guys are from Pasadena, but there's two Pasadenas. There's Northwest Pasadena, then there's Pasadena. So I'm going to separate it just like the police do. What do I see in Northwest Pasadena? Because I don't see any of you guys up there in Northwest. So for the movement that I see you guys coming on up there to Northwest Pasadena, giving your time, helping out, showing some love, helping with resources. What else do I see for Northwest Pasadena? I see the at-risk youth center, a shelter for youth up there because a lot of our kids are sleeping at La Pintoresca Park. I see love, but I see some healing that is going to need to take place. Our city is distraught, it's oppressed, it's suppressed. I don't know if you guys noticed that all of the liquor stores are in Northwest Pasadena, between Lake and Orange Grove, up Lake to Woodbury, cross Woodbury to Lincoln, and down Lincoln to Orange Grove. That little radius has the most liquor stores. No health stores, right? So I'm gonna need some health stores, health food stores that take EBT. I'm gonna need basic essentials for people to eat. I wanna do a food pantry because it's basic necessities. How can you worry about going to school if your stomach is touching your back? So I'm gonna need, we're gonna need to just love on each other up there and around here and all of Pasadena. They would like us to keep dividing ourselves, but I would like us to not. Because there was this young man talking the other day. I don't know if you know about the two young men that were murdered at Northwest. I knew both of those boys. I actually, I mentored those boys, okay? I've been begging the city for something to do, for resources for these youth and these young adults. And now they're getting killed, okay? So now I feel like I failed them. So what I need to do is work harder. What you need to do is work harder because they don't want to die. And if you notice anything, those babies tried to drive themselves to the hospital. So what is that saying about our ambulance? What is that saying about our city? They don't trust them. So I'm gonna need the relationship between Northwest Pasadena and Pasadena to get better. That's what I see. I see some love, you know what I mean?
I think another difference between the civil rights movement is today is the very fact that we can be sitting up here and not being stoned or shot or burned, hung, what have you. We're coming out of a different era. So during the civil rights movement, they were coming out of Jim Crow. They were coming out of separate but equal. They were coming out of a deep segregation and a very systemically racist society, even more so than what we see today, even though it's still bad today. And what we also have is we have educated Black folks with access to opportunity, and because we've tasted opportunity, we're not willing to let it go. right? We're not willing to say, oh, that was nice for a moment, so y'all can have it back, and we'll just sit here and yes, master, we'll just do whatever you say. That's not going to happen anymore. You have a generation of people who are like, no, we're not going to put up with this. And we also recognize that, you know, black folks are 12% of the population in the United States. But we see that we're not the only ones who are suffering with systemic oppression and racism. And so we have the capability of actually rallying the troops and say, if we bind together, and if we fight together, we can actually get this stuff done. During the March for J.R. Thomas, it wasn't just black folks on the street, right? And so we were able to get numbers. Jasmine did a fantastic job in rallying the people to say, no, this is not right. Let's call injustice injustice. Let's call sin sin. Let's name it. And let's demand for the right thing. Let's demand for justice. And I don't care if you're black, white, blue, green, or orange. Your faith as Christians, your faith requires you to pursue justice. Your faith requires you to do the right thing. Your ethical, moral compass. If you're not a Christian, if you have that ethical, moral compass within you, justice should be a part of that radar, right? And so it's not just black folks who are saying, this is not right. It needs to be everybody. And so I think that being in 2017, not 16, that just happened, being in 2017, that has allowed us the privilege of knowing the power that we have access to actually get the change done that we need to get done.
Really quickly, and I'm pretty much echoing what everyone else has said, but there are two differences that I want to repeat because I feel like there's a call to action in both of them. First is that the problem looks different than it did in the 60s. When we talk about racism, we're talking about highly adaptive systems of social control that are based on the construct of race. And they look different, they evolve, they do not simply end. And so we tend to tell this story about the civil rights movement in this very naive way, thinking that, oh, well, Dr. King preached the I Have a Dream speech, and then it happened. Only it didn't. And so now the problem looks different. And so if you're waiting for people to bust out the hoods and the nooses and their pitchforks and their torches and to come to somebody's apartment building before you get active, you are waiting too long. It is happening. The institution of slavery still exists in this country. It never ended. People are still being lynched. Leadership is still being targeted in our communities. It's still happening. So you cannot wait for it to be overt like it was back then. Also, leadership looks different in this movement. We have a lot of decentralized movements, and that is a strength of our movement, I believe. And so if you're waiting for a Dr. King or a Malcolm X that you can jump behind, you're waiting too long. You're letting the moment pass you. We don't have Dr. Kings and Malcolm X's, and the leadership that we do have looks different from them. Those charismatic leaders that we have, they're not walking around in suits and ties and trying to meet all of the checkpoints of respectability. They don't look that way. And you can't be looking for them. And mind you, even when we were wearing suits and ties, they were still lynching us.
Right. Come on.
And so if you're waiting for those signs of the old world and the old civil rights movement, you're going to miss your moment. It's happening right now.
I wish we had about an hour and a half more, and we've got about 4 minutes. I know, and I've got like 9 questions I haven't asked. What's the word that you have for us? I want to leave it as open as that. You look out in this group that is gathered here, you look out at us. What word do you want us leaving this place gnawing at our heart and our spirit that won't let go?
Resistance.
Yeah. Get in there.
Standing up against social injustice, coming to those city council meetings, but actually talking and saying what you see. It looks like extending some love. Yeah, it looks like just stepping against the social order, the everyday social order. If you see something wrong, say something. You know what I mean? But don't go say something please don't call the police and say something. Just say something to that person because, man, these youngsters, they listen. They listen. All you have to do is stop acting scared and talk to them. Because the energy, they feel the energy. You know what I mean? If you act scared, then they're going to be like, well, they're scared of me anyway. You just not talk to them anyway, you know? But resistance means just stepping outside of yourself for somebody else. And Amber, that's Amber's quote.
It is. I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. Stepping out of the echo chamber. We're in one right now, by the way. So I guess like my Swarthmore journey to my Fuller journey is essentially it is a bridge between progressivism and like fundamentalism, basically. And so if we, particularly for those of you who identify as Christians, if we cannot lift up Jesus in such a way that both progressives and conservatives can hear it, we failed. Okay, so I think that's what this time requires. It requires a multi-theological, ecumenical, like Muslim, Sikh, everybody type of coalition. But for me, that means that I need to be authentically Christian within that space. I need not be nebulous about the God that I worship within that space. I can be convicted and stand on Christ. So I don't know. We used to sing a song, Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand.
Janelle, did you want to go? You can go. Okay. I was about to write down what I was going to say because I didn't want to forget nothing. Someone says, if you want people to leave with one thing, here's my chance. Okay. I want to say to you, Christians, they taught us the song in Sunday school wrong. It should have been, He put the whole world in our hands. They should have taught us to sing it that way. Because when God creates human beings, God blesses them and says, rule over the earth. So God blesses them with power, with agency. You don't even have to look at the scripture to know that. Just look at history. The world that we have is shaped by human choices. And so the fate of the world is in your hands. We can't leave it to God. We can't even leave it to our leaders. It is in our hands. And you're sitting here and some of you say, well, it's too big. It's too complex. How can we? No, you can do something. So if my name ends up in the news because some police officer stopped me because of a busted traffic light, and I'm not living, do not offer my family your thoughts and prayers. Offer them your body. Offer them your imagination. Offer them your creativity. Offer them, if you're gonna offer thoughts and prayers, then think of something. If you're gonna offer them your prayers, then you better come out with a word of God and do something. Come on, brother.
Acts 2 says, in the last days, I will pour out my spirit on sons and daughters. How does it go? In the last days, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. Be prophetic. We all have a call to be prophetic. We all have a call to see what is wrong in this world and call it a spade of spades, call sin sin, name it, identify it, speak truth, and speak what God would have it to be, speak justice.
to be prophetic. Sometimes we say, well, that's just for the office of the prophet. Or some people even say, well, the prophets don't even exist anymore. That was for the Bible times. But Acts 2 says that God has poured out his Spirit on all of us to prophesy. So be prophetic with the injustices that you see in our society, and don't let them pass you by.
Hello guys, that was such a great engagement, and I think these are some of the engagements that are necessary and needed for Black Americans, because when we get to these discussions, we are able to demystify some of the challenges that we face and have a way forward that we can use to address them. So how has the system in America worked against Black child, or even Blacks for that matter? The American system, often heralded as a beacon of opportunity, has long promised a dream of equity and prosperity to all of its citizens. Yet, for Black Americans, this dream has too often been deferred. Echoing the haunting words of Langston Hughes in his poem, Harlem, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? For centuries, systemic barriers rooted in slavery, segregation, and persistent inequality have shriveled the aspirations of Black Americans, leaving them to grapple with a reality far removed from the nation's ideals. Hughes' poem asks if a deferred dream festers like a sore and then runs. This imagery captures the wounds inflicted by policies like redlining, which confine Black families to underfunded neighborhoods, or the discriminatory enforcement of laws that swelled incarceration rates among Black men. The American system, with its constitution, once counting enslaved people as 3/5 of a person, laid a foundation where economic and social mobility for Black Americans was stifled. Even after the abolition of slavery, Jim Crow laws and voter suppression ensured that the dream of full citizenship fostered and healed as opportunity remained out of reach. Or does it stink like rotten meat? Hughes probes further, evoking the decay of a hope amid broken promise. The civil rights movements of the 1960s cracked open doors, but the dream deferred lingers in underfunded schools, wage gaps, and healthcare disparities that disproportionately plagued Black communities. The wealth gap, where the median white family holds nearly 10 times the wealth of the median Black family, reeks of a system that has failed to nourish equitable growth. Despite contributions to culture, science, and labor, Black Americans have watched the fruits of their toil spoil under systemic neglect. Finally, Hughes warns, maybe it just ages. Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? The weight of deferred dreams has indeed sagged upon a generation, visible in its exhaustion of those fighting for justice, from reconstruction of Black Lives Matter. Yet it has also exploded in uprisings against police brutality and racial injustice, a testament of resilience amid frustration. The American system, built on ideals of liberty, has yet to dismantle the structures that defy the dream for Black Americans, leaving Hughes' question unanswered and the pursuit of the dream an ending struggle. That is it from what these people are having. And if you look at that poem alone, it really tells you the kind of suffering and the kind of challenges and even the thought process of a Black person in America, because looking at how the systems and policies were created to ensure that a Black person is crippled from birth to death is just heart-wrenching. Tell me down in the comment section what you think about this. And if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.